Right now, invisibly, silently, completely without your permission, thousands of voices are passing through your body. Music, phone calls, someone in another country describing their weather to a stranger. All of it is flying through your skull at the speed of light, and you feel absolutely nothing. This is radio, and once you understand it, you will never trust an empty room again. Let's start with the fact that breaks most people's brains. Radio waves are light, not like light, not similar to light. They are the exact same thing as the light coming out of your screen right now. The only difference is the size. Visible light is made of tiny, tightly packed ripples about the width of a germ. Radio waves are the same ripples, just stretched out, enormously stretched. Some radio waves are longer than a football field. Some are longer than a mountain. There are radio waves rolling past you right now that are hundreds of miles from crest to crest. So when you picture a radio wave, don't picture a little squiggle. Picture a wave the size of a country washing through the planet like the ocean washes through a fishing net. And you are the fishing net. But where do these giant invisible waves come from? Here's the beautifully stupid answer. You make a radio wave by taking some electrons and shaking them. That's it. That's the whole trick. If you grab a bunch of electrons in a metal rod and wiggle them up and down, back and forth, very, very fast, they throw off invisible ripples into space. Shake the electrons faster, you get a smaller wave. Shake them slower, you get a bigger wave. A radio transmitter is just a very disciplined, very fast electron shaking machine. An antenna is the stick you shake them in. And at the other end, the miracle runs in reverse. When that giant wave washes over another metal rod miles away, it gives the electrons in that rod a tiny nudge. It shakes them ever so slightly in the exact same rhythm. Your radio feels that nudge, amplifies it about 1,000,000,000,000 times, and turns it back into a voice. That's a radio. That's your phone. That's every wireless thing you have ever owned. Shake electrons here, feel the shake over there. The entire wireless world is two sticks vibrating at each other across a distance. Now, here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Nobody meant to find these. In the 1860s, a Scottish mathematician named James Clerk Maxwell was doing pure abstract math about electricity and magnetism, the kind of math with no obvious point, and his equations coughed up a prediction. They said invisible waves should exist and they should travel at the speed of light. Maxwell had discovered radio on paper, with a pencil, before a single human had ever knowingly heard one. 20 years later, a German physicist named Heinrich Hertz actually built the machine to prove it. He made a spark on one side of his lab, and a matching spark jumped across a gap on the other side of the room with nothing connecting them. He had transmitted the first radio message in history. The message was essentially a spark, but still. And when they asked Heinrich Hertz what his world-changing discovery was good for, he gave one of the greatest wrong answers in science. He said, and I am barely paraphrasing, nothing. It's useless. He genuinely thought invisible waves that travel at light speed and pass through walls were a fun physics party trick with no practical value whatsoever. The entire modern world is built on the thing he called useless. We named the unit of frequency after him anyway, so every time your Wi-Fi runs at 2.4 gigahertz, you are quietly mocking the man who thought it would never matter. Now, radio waves have a superpower that light does not, and it's the reason radio took over the planet. They go through things. Visible light is tiny, so almost anything stops it. A curtain, your eyelid, a single sheet of paper. But a radio wave is enormous, so most of the world is basically not there. Walls, fog, your body, wooden doors, all of it is a light morning mist to a wave the size of a stadium. It just strolls through. That's why your phone works inside a building and a flashlight does not shine through the wall. Same physics, wildly different size. And this is the point in the story where we need to talk about the people who took this the furthest. Because while the rest of us just want the Wi-Fi to reach the bathroom, there is an entire global tribe of hobbyists who spend their nights doing something genuinely magnificent. They are called amateur radio operators, ham radio, and they are about to make everything much weirder. Here's their first trick. Way up above you, about 60 miles high, there's a layer of the sky called the ionosphere, where the sun smashes atoms apart all day and leaves the air electrically charged. And it turns out that certain radio waves, when they hit this layer, don't escape into space. They bounce off the sky, like a stone skipping on a pond, except the pond is upside down and made of charged air. So a ham radio operator in Ohio can shout a radio wave up at the sky at just the right angle, bounce it off the ionosphere, and have it come back down in Argentina. No satellites, no internet, no cell towers, just one person, a wire in their backyard, and the ceiling of the world. People have circled radio signals all the way around the planet this way, with less electrical power than a bright light bulb. But bouncing off the sky is amateur hour, and I mean that as a compliment, because the amateurs do not stop there. Some ham operators got bored of the sky and decided to bounce signals off the moon. This is real. It's called Moonbounce. They aim a radio signal at the actual moon. 240,000 miles away, it smacks into the lunar surface, and a whisper of it bounces back to Earth about 2.5 seconds later, where another hobbyist is waiting to catch it. People have held conversations using the moon as a mirror, not scientists with a national budget. Guys named Dave, in their gardens. And if the moon is too easy for you, there's this. When a meteor burns up in the sky, it leaves a trail of glowing electrified gas for a second or two. Ham operators noticed that you can bounce a radio signal off that streak of dead meteor before it fades. It's called meteor scatter. These people are timing their conversations to the exact moment a shooting star vaporizes over the atmosphere. Most of us make a wish. They send an email. They also just talk to space. The International Space Station has a ham radio on board, and astronauts chat with random amateur operators on the ground as they fly over at 17,000 miles an hour. A kid with a homemade antenna in their backyard can, with the right timing, have a genuine conversation with a human being in orbit. And schools do this. On purpose. It works. Now here's the thing people forget about ham radio, right up until the day it saves their life. When a hurricane knocks out the cell towers and the internet dies and the power grid goes dark and every glowing rectangle you own becomes a very expensive coaster, the radio still works. A wire and a battery and a person who knows the code. When modern communication collapses, the obsolete hobbyists in their garages become the only voices getting messages out of the disaster zone. The oldest technology quietly saving everyone during the failure of the newest. So maybe don't laugh at the guy with the big antenna. He may one day be the only reason help knows you're there, okay? Deep breath. Because we've only been talking about radio that humans make, and the universe has been broadcasting this whole time. Point a radio antenna at Jupiter and you'll hear it hiss and crackle and roar. Jupiter is a natural radio station, blasting out storms of radio noise so loud that hobbyists on Earth listen to the planet for fun. Point one at the sun and it screams. Point it at deep space and you'll pick up a faint, even hiss coming from every direction at once. That hiss is the oldest thing you will ever detect. It's the leftover heat of the Big Bang itself, radio waves that have been traveling for 13.8 billion years, and they are ending their journey inside your equipment. A tiny fraction of the static on an old untuned television was literally the birth of the universe knocking on the screen. And my personal favorite. In the 1930s, radio astronomy did not exist, so a man named Grote Reber, an amateur, a hobbyist, built a 30-foot radio telescope in his own backyard in Illinois, terrifying his neighbors, and spent years mapping the radio sky by himself. For nearly a decade, this one hobbyist was essentially the only radio astronomer on planet Earth. An entire science, invented in a guy's yard, because he was curious. The amateurs again, always the amateurs. Meanwhile, 4 billion miles away, the Voyager spacecraft is still whispering to us right now, tonight, using a radio transmitter with about the power of the light bulb in your refrigerator. That impossibly faint wave crosses the entire solar system, gets quieter and quieter, and we still catch it. 20 watts versus the void, and the 20 watts is winning. So let's go back to that empty room. It is not empty. It never was. It's flooded, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with the voices of your neighbors, the leftover glow of the Big Bang, the roar of Jupiter, a whisper from Voyager, and somewhere in the mix, a retiree named Dave bouncing hello off the moon just to prove he can. All of it, sailing straight through your body, right now, and you never felt a single wave. The air was never quiet. You just didn't have the right piece of metal to listen. Then, we get curious about random stuff so you don't have to. Subscribe and feed your idle curiosity.